conclusion of our third annual World Sanskrit Day celebration. It's been quite inspiring weekend here at Ananda Ashram in Monroe, New York. We're already planning. No. Probably not. Oh. We should start over maybe? Is that better?
No. Why don't you come here, sit?
Hello? Something happened. It was on before, yeah? Yeah?
This is the wrong channel.
Whoa, now it's on. Welcome all friends to the third annual World Sanskrit Day celebration. We're at the conclusion with our panel discussion today. We've had a very inspiring weekend here with all kinds of Sanskrit teaching and wonderful music and dance in the evenings. And today we're going to have just a discussion on where do we go from here? What does Sanskrit mean to us? Is it important? We do want people both online and in the room. If you have questions, at some point we will take questions during the panel, not to wait to the end. But please come stand over by Seth. And when we give you a signal, you'll come stand by this microphone and ask your question so that you're also online for the people at a distance. So I thought I would tell, Indra doesn't like me to tell stories, but I have to start with a story. Maybe 2005 or 6, at the Ashram in San Francisco, we were commonly doing, Dr. Sharma would be there talking on a subject, variety of subjects. And Indra and I would do some chanting related to that subject before it started. This particular time, Indra was off at a physical therapy counter-strain workshop, and I was there with Dr. Sharma, and we did not have time beforehand to talk about what's he going to talk about, what am I going to chant in relationship to that. And he was already starting a little bit to have a little bit of a hesitation in his speech. So we're standing up in front of the group. There's maybe 50 or 60 people there. Quite a nice audience of older and younger people there for Sanskrit, people there for asana. And I say to Dr. Sharma, what are you going to talk about? And he said, I'm going to talk about birds. And I'm thinking, this is not going to be good. I'm already worried about him. So I said, okay, and picked something out of my brain to chant and did. And then he started talking to the room. And he said, Dvija, one of the words for bird, dvi meaning two, and ja, to be born, twice born. And I'm thinking, okay. And then he points around the room, he makes eye contact. It looked like he was making eye contact with every one of the 50 or 60 or 70 people in the room. And then he hesitated. His timing was amazing. He hesitated and he said, you are all also Dvija. You were born from your mother. Something happened during your life. Maybe somebody important to you passed away. Maybe there was a car accident. Something that brought you to yoga. And here we are in a Sanskrit setting. Asana people interested in meditation, people interested in Ayurveda, the whole works. I think by the time he finished talking, and he only took about 15 minutes, he went full circle into the whole subject of what we were doing here that day. And I was blown away. But the part where you're all Dvija, and we are all Dvija, something has happened. And for those of us who nothing happened during our life to attract us to a setting such as this, something at some point happened somewhere along the way. There's no question. Previous life, early in this life, something. Anyway, I just thought, I've been told by many students, please tell the story We want to hear about the lineage that you come through. And I just think it's really helpful for people to know. And Dr. Sharma got adopted here, in 1999 or so? And he got taken in like a vacuum. I mean, we could not have been more privileged to have somebody of his dimension with us. Anyway, I thought I would start today with that story. I'm only going to monitor the program. I'm not going to say too much. But I want to hear from our panel, and also you people in the audience, both here and online. If you have something, not only a question, but if you have something to contribute, please do. I'm just thinking for next year, in about a month, I'm going to put out an email to everybody who is related to this program and have those people tell 5 people to put this event on your calendar for next August. And those 5 people tell another 5 people, and before we know it, we'll have the room packed. Not that we need the room packed, but we need to serve those who really are looking for hope and looking for some connection. Many people are looking, don't have it, and maybe this won't be the thing for them, but maybe it will. So we need to make sure the bridge is open for crossing. That's the only thing I can say about bringing more people in. Certainly more money, great, we need it, but certainly bringing more hope to more people is the most important. Okay, Anna, why don't you start? You just sit right there. Make sure that works. And we'll go around a number of times, so don't feel like you must get it all in now. It might even be that you don't have much to say this time, but by the time you hear others speaking, you might think, oh, wait a minute, I need to get that back. Mm-mm. Yeah. Nope. I heard something at some point.
Oh, now it is. Okay. Okay, it's fine now. Thank you. Well, I wanted to thank the organizers and everyone in the team who made this event possible. It's such an inspiring and enriching occasion for all of us to gather and to hear from all the different areas. I mean, from brain scanning to devotional hymns and stotra to upasarga to more grammatical, from chanting to grammatical. A video that Dr. Jaishi sent us from Mysore. So many wonderful things, music, dance, everything. And where do we go from here? Well, I don't know. I feel that Sanskrit has a way of catching people. People come to Sanskrit, or Sanskrit comes to people when it's the right moment. So I've always felt that it's not necessarily something that could be propagated to. I mean, of course, it could be sung and chanted and taught to the masses, but I think some people will connect with Sanskrit at a certain point in their life or a moment in their life, and this is how it was with me. I came to Sanskrit through yoga asana practice and wanting to come closer to the philosophy. And I thought, well, I don't want to read the translations, I want to read the source. Mm-hmm. And that's how I came to Sanskrit in Barcelona. We have a beautiful department of Sanskrit at the University of Barcelona. And so yes, I believe that Sanskrit has a way of catching you, maybe even unaware. Maybe you hear a mantra. I think a lot of people come to Sanskrit through yoga asana practice, which I think is actually a beautiful entryway, because whether you want to or not, the practice of asanas over many years, it transforms you. So you have no way, there's no way out. You will arrive at Sanskrit at some point. And then it just sort of blossoms and opens up. And I always feel that Sanskrit, yesterday we saw these beautiful imagery of the ocean, and that's always how I feel with Sanskrit. I feel like I'm just sort of dipping my toe, or I'm sort of in Sanskrit, and all I want to do in my life is I want to absorb my mind in Sanskrit. When people say, why is Sanskrit? Even my own father, he says, why are you studying Sanskrit? I mean, he says it lovingly, but I don't always have an answer. It's just I feel such joy and happiness and peace when my mind is occupied in Sanskrit. And I think it would be like this for many, many people who just haven't encountered Sanskrit. So I'm definitely all for spreading the message that Sanskrit can be. I think it's a very powerful tool in everyday life. It's a very powerful tool for meditation, for any yoga practice. I think there should be no yoga teachers out there without profound Sanskrit instruction. And yes, it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful tool for meditation. It's so many things. I find it hard to put into words, and I also feel that children connect to it very strongly. And you were showing beautiful video before with Tina Turner doing a recording of Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu with a group of, I think it was a Swiss school, I'm not sure, but so children, my experience is that children connect very naturally to Sanskrit alphabet chanting and any chanting. And the rhythm, the meter and the chandas that flows in the Sanskrit verses, children really connect to this. And so I see a future in reaching out maybe to younger generations also, in kindergarten, even kindergarten age, kindergarten, school, high school, and of course Sanskrit should be part of any, yoga instructors, Ayurveda instructors, anything that's based on texts or philosophy that was originally written in Sanskrit. I think it's very essential. They should all receive training in Sanskrit, and it will really enrich in their practice, I believe.
Yeah. So let me and you'll go next. I'm just going to move it around. But before we do, something that Guruji always said, and I remember at the ashram in San Francisco once, Guruji saying, and he often said, nature knows more about you than you know about yourself. And then somebody was sitting in this particular class at one point and said to Guruji, then why should we bother? Why don't we just coast? And Guruji was brilliant. He said, because God helps those who help themselves. So why should we make an effort to attract more people? I think because we should. Because how did we get here? Didn't somebody attract us here, one way or the other? So we should reach out and do the same thing. And for those who really want it, they'll come. And those who don't, that's fine. Not in.
Just want to make a little elaboration on Guruji's story that Shant opened the conference with. One of the words, Dvija, is one of the synonyms for Brahmin. And the reason is this: you're born, and then at a certain young age, you undergo an initiation ceremony with the sacred thread, during which the Gayatri mantra is passed on from father to the son. And it is symbolic of the young child's undertaking the pursuit of knowledge and spirituality and wisdom. And that particular moment in time is considered one of the greatest sanskaras, from which point onwards you really start your meaningful life, or you at least start traveling that path. And therefore, the physical birth is one thing, but a nuanced undertaking with mindfulness and with some doctrine coming from the elders and the wise ones, to start that journey, if possible, is even a more meaningful birth. And therefore, because the Brahmins were supposed to follow that particular lifestyle, the word became synonymous with it. But as Shantananda paraphrased Guruji saying, if the understanding is that a mindful pursuit or undertaking of any mindful pursuit gives a new dimension to the life, then any attendance or satsanga or attempt or endeavor that is done in a mindful way can be a yet another chapter in one's own life. And what I'm getting with this is every attendance in a Sanskrit program or meditation, epigenetics will tell you that the choices you made yesterday will explain why you are what you are today. And the choices you make today will give you a hint of what you are going to be tomorrow. So these things tied together, we have the choice, and that's the only karma yoga that Lord has allowed us without worrying about the consequences. If we allow those mindful things to come into our practice that will make us be reborn in every instance, then every instance is an opportunity for all of us to be Dvija. So thanks for being here. We'll talk more when I talk again.
Does anybody in the audience here have anything to add or question? More voices is wonderful, so don't. And if you do, please go stand by Seth, and then we'll bring you up to the microphone so you can be visible to the people online. And the people online, if you have questions, please let Seth know so that he can get our attention for that. Well, you seem to have the microphone, so...
I do seem to have the microphone. I'm not fully sure what I want to say at this moment, but you scooped me up. You scooped me up at the first World Sanskrit Day.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was a little scared because it seemed like evangelical. And because I just get scared. And some of the things that you've told me that have been the most powerful have been the Sanskrit is for people who need a little extra hope. And I've found it here, and I've found it in a community where, for the most part, I'm not afraid to be wrong. Sanskrit ensures that I fail repeatedly every day. Which always makes me think there's a Beckett quote, like, fail more, fail better.
Tell a little bit about how your poetry relates to Sanskrit, perhaps.
How my poetry relates to Sanskrit?
Mm-hmm.
I had a career in poetry to the extent that one can have a career in poetry without being a professor, which I had no interest in. And when things happened, I was reading something. There's a Christian Wyman. He used to be the editor of Poetry Magazine, and now he's teaching, I believe, in the Divinity School at Yale. If not in the Divinity School, then in something related to that. And I was reading him on Simone Weil yesterday, and he was talking about how her problem is that she stops at the anguish. She doesn't go to that thing that's beyond it. And I found that a lot of my sort of training in poetry and, what I was repeating to myself again and again was so much in this modality of the lament. And I think, within the aesthetics, there is so much, there's so much that stops at the anguish. And it shows, like, people commit suicide all over the place, but, I had multiple people I know. The suicide rate among artists is high, and then it's highest amongst writers, and then within writers, it's highest amongst poets. And I think you just spend so much time in your own head, and I've been a yogi for a long time. I come through asana. I had a friend who was working at an academic publisher many years ago, and I've never told you this. I've never told anyone, and then I'm nervous I'm going to mispronounce something, but I am guaranteed to get things wrong. Failure is my specialty. Jeevani told me that the wonderful thing about being me was that I got to be like the little baby at the table. And I haven't forgotten that, because it's such a sympathetic rendering of being so new. And sometimes it's like all my grandparents here.
Mm-hmm.
But that might not have come out the way I meant it, with the profound affection.
Perfect.
But it goes with you scooping me up. Where I don't know where I was, like tangent after tangent. But my first World Sanskrit Day was, I hesitate to tell the story a little bit, but I just can say some. It was just post-pandemic. It still brings up tears. I was so heartbroken over the pandemic and my separation from this place. It was so hard, and I came back once, and it was maybe a little early, and I kind of wrote a Dear John letter to the ashram, like, I love you so much, but I'm going to have to look for somewhere else, because this doesn't seem to be available anymore. So I'm going to have to move on. So I looked around, and it led me back here. So this was the first World Sanskrit Day. It just happened to be that was the day I'd looked around, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have to try out Ananda again. And I was coming here, and then it was just like one of those particularly crazy days in my life. Like maybe the day before, my doctor had said something about a lump in my breast, which turned out to be nothing, but I was a little panicked about it. And then that morning, when I was supposed to come here, I had gotten a text message, like, big drama, of, yeah, I think I should just leave it at big drama. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to come here at all. And then I, like lots of 911 and blah, 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 blah. And I was just, and I couldn't figure out how to get to the bus. This is also the origin story of me being driven to the ashram. I called the man with the van, a guy I know from work. Drive me, just take me. And I had no idea it was Sanskrit Day. I just sat down, and Devane was giving a presentation on Sanskrit poetry.
Bell went off in your head right away.
Yeah. I'm in.
Well, thank you for expressing that. That's really wonderful. And I think it's the cool thing about this place is that you can express your deep regret, your deep fears, your deep anguish. Where else can you do it? Nobody wants to know. But Sanskrit's that connector for everything we're talking about, everything we did this weekend, everything that the ashram does all year round. And the hope, Guruji always talked about Sanskrit, the sandhi in Sanskrit, the end of one word bumping into the very next letter of the next word, creating a bridge. And everything that Guruji taught was like, what does this mean to you? Don't just listen and read and assume it's somebody else. What does it mean to you? So he was always teaching us through sandhi to build bridges between cultures, between people, and it's very powerful. Not that we can do it all the time, we cannot, but we should keep an eye out for doing it. I know when I came here in 1972, I was a suicidal young man. Guruji just said, if you want to stay here, you must study Sanskrit. Bingo. I felt like hope was given where I hadn't had hope before. So he said 5 words, all done. 50 years later, we're here together doing this thing that we need to do more of. Anything.
Namo Namaha. Greetings to everyone here and online. I want to thank the Ashram and everyone here who's helped make this World Sanskrit Day celebration possible and for inviting me. I guess I definitely want Sanskrit to succeed in the world. I don't want it to go away. And I can think of a couple things related to that are relevant. Shanta mentioned the parampara, the tradition of handing down the knowledge from teacher to student. So I think teachers and students are important. So to say a little bit more about that, I think when you're meant to meet teachers in your life, they come along. So if you can be open to the idea that somebody you're meant to meet or that you're meant to go somewhere, go to the place, do the thing, and you might meet someone. You might meet somebody and your paths might not cross again for years, but if you're open to, I found in my life that whenever I was meant to meet a teacher, I met the teacher. But you can't just meet the teacher, you have to be the student. You have to do the hard work, and you have to sit in the room, and you have to know nothing of what's going on, and you don't know what page you're on, and you don't know what line you're on, and everybody else is like, you're going like this, and they're going, you're on the wrong page. You have to sit there, and you have to, take your lumps, and if you don't, you won't stay with the language maybe. So part of that struggle will get you to the other side, but if Sanskrit was simple, maybe we wouldn't want to do it at all. Yeah, so be a student and be on the lookout for teachers. And to that point, we're at a point where, the pandemic has brought us so much sadness, but it has also really opened up a lot of online opportunities, and many people, particularly in India, have really opened their hearts and minds to the world. I mean, they've given us a lot of really great programming. There's a lot of institutes in India that are offering online courses. And everybody might have a different entry point, but I think there's several courses out of India that are worth trying. They might not be right for you, but you get some aspect of it might ring true for you. And also in the US and all around the world. So just because you don't have a Sanskrit professor at a university near you doesn't mean that you don't have access to teachers. So the student-teacher thing is the one thing I wanted to mention. Then the other thing I wanted to mention is abhyasa, right? So people here have a chanting practice, probably a meditation practice, maybe a yoga practice. Do you have your Sanskrit study practice every day? Because if you don't, I highly recommend it. And it doesn't, just like everybody says, oh, I don't have time to meditate, oh, this is going to be too much. I'd say for the bulk of my time studying Sanskrit, I had only 15-minute increments of time available to me over years. So I would spend 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night, and the progress is amazing. The idea of doing something every day, you will make progress. So I would never leave the house without some notebook with me. I had a paradigm book with me for about 5 or 6 years that I carried everywhere I went. And if you have 5 minutes on a train platform, open it up, take a look at something. Or have headphones in, have recorded some verse you're trying to memorize and recite it to yourself. There's little ways that you can fit Sanskrit into your day. And to that point, whatever this practice is, think back to what you did in class. Whatever you did in class or with some teacher is not magically going to turn into processed knowledge for you unless you take it home and then look at it again. Do you understand what was done? Do you not understand what was done? What were you afraid to ask that you didn't ask, that you should have asked? What will you ask next time? So I think hopefully that will help people think about the language.
Thank you so much. Everything that everybody says sparks another spark. And I just had another spark, but it's gone. But all of us together are creating a synapse, we were talking about this. I was talking about this with Naren earlier. I had a question last night to Naren about, and I'm sorry, the sitar player's name again? Indrajit. About if you had 3 of him playing the sitar last night, and we all closed our eyes, would it all sound like one sitar? Or would it sound horrible? Because there's all kinds of cacophony going on? And Naren and Indrajit's response was, you don't do that. You don't do that, because it's not going to be as pure as it could be if it's the one player playing the one note at a time. But even what Naren was talking about, it was so inspiring that I thought, more music here, Not that there's not enough, but let the music, let the dance, let the Sanskrit, let's let the world know that it's all here. And why not? Guruji said, nature helps those who help themselves. And we want to do what we can do for the ashram as much as possible. Do you want to go again? Yes. Yeah.
Hello? Yes. I loved what you contributed. And I wanted to say also about that, so the student teacher, I personally love, especially the Shruti Parampara, the listening, what Dr. Jayashree was saying in her video. Language learning really starts with the listening and then the repeating, and it also, this is from music teaching in classical Indian music also. You don't need paper, pen, it's the listening and the repeating process, and I find that very beautiful. But what you said about student and teacher, so I was given the opportunity this summer at the visit during the summer visit at Ananda Ashram to share some of the teachings that I had received from Shanta and Indira on metric, on Sanskrit meter, and I always felt I wanted to share. I don't feel natural drive to I want to be a teacher. I've never felt like I wanted to be a teacher, but I felt like I wanted to share what the excitement and the enthusiasm and the love that I feel for this particular, we all have these favorite parts maybe of Sanskrit that just call our attention, that are just our favorites. And I thought maybe for Sanskrit, it's also beautiful if the moment that you receive something and you feel you have it, or you get it, or you can share it with others, I found that was a really beautiful experience to be able to sit in a group and share that, and then for them to take it on and maybe share it. And then Andrea was going away with Shivani and doing the meter marking up, and I got so excited because it's just this little seed that, the seed comes through the teachers and then you kind of share it and it just goes out and so I thought that was beautiful what you said. And also about the practice, the sadhana, and for me, I enjoy the writing, for example, because that's my kind of a weakness also, and of course grammar. So you've inspired me to, and I want to go back to Indira's stotra and do them all word by word and really get my grammar stronger. But I think also the Devanagari writing is a beautiful daily practice. Yeah, and it can reach people who are maybe not into Sanskrit yet, but because the calligraphy, I had some co-students in Sanskrit who were designers and calligraphists, and they just did such beautiful Devanagari. So with Sanskrit, there's so many entryways. One very strong one is music, I think. Music and mantra and Devanagari and the philosophy and the devotional verses. So everybody finds their own little entryway, I guess. So that's what I wanted to add.
So one other thing with that, many people say, oh, I'm too old, or it's just too big. And I'll just say, the vowel chart in the alphabet is enough. That's all you need. Just go learn about how to pronounce the vowels. Them, that's all you need. You're done. You don't even need to go from there. And many people who decided to try that came back later and said, I want more. So when you said seeds, I kind of had this image of seeds falling from plants, and then the wind blowing the seeds somewhere, and the seeds taking root, and then they're growing, whatever that seed is from. And I think we should all assume that we're all planting seeds, and we want the wind the vata to come and blow them wherever they need to go. And whether you want to call yourself a teacher or not, I don't care. You are a teacher. And not only that, but a teacher is one who inspires hope and inspires inspiration. And you don't have to use the teacher word. Forget about it, because that does trigger people. Yeah, I get it. In the late 90s, somebody said to me, "When are you going to teach?" And I said, "I'll never teach. Don't talk to me about that." And within a few years, a switch went on. And I don't know how, and I don't know why Sanskrit's so amazing. And Guruji talks about not knowing why these things happen. But when the powerful things happen to you, pay attention. And follow the course as much as you're supposed to. You'll figure it out. Narenji. Oh, and anybody in the audience who's sitting here, please, if you have anything you want to contribute, no matter how little you think it is, please just go stand over by Seth, and then we're going to have you come up to the microphone. And anybody online, please let Seth know if you have something to say about it.
Yeah, in fact, at some point we may actually have to stop and ask audience to say something, because I know that all of them have to say something, but unless we put them on the spot, they won't. They'll just be waiting for each other.
Great idea.
I will be very brief, and if there is another turn, I will say more things. I want to go on a long monologue, but I will just comment a little bit on what everyone has said, hopefully in the process contributing to the promotion of Sanskrit language. Let's start with Andrea. When she was narrating her story of her separation from Ananda during COVID, I was listening to it with a palpitating heart, because as part of the management, I was single-handedly responsible for making it inaccessible to people for best intentions, but I was expecting her to say that it was Naren's fault. She was either diplomatic or ignorant. Whichever it is, it worked in my favor. I'm glad that she came back. So that's one comment. Second comment is what Shanta said. People said we're too old to learn Sanskrit. If you're too old, that's all the more reason you need to learn Sanskrit, because the neurodegeneration has started. Sorry, old people. Formation of new synapses and neuroplasticity is a massive subject that is gaining a lot of popularity, and languages and music are considered supreme in rewiring the neuronal circuitry, which is especially pertinent in the old age. So if people say, I am old and therefore I cannot learn Sanskrit, the answer is, because you're old, you must learn Sanskrit or else. When you are in an infantile stage, supposed to expose the child to different musics and different tongues, whether he understands or not, if he doesn't understand. But that is supposed to cause a massive catalysm in neurogenesis, and when you are getting older, the same kind of process works backwards. It is a known thing, it's not even outlandish anymore, it's a known thing in neuroscience that when you are of a certain age, you actually have to start learning a new skill, and not just in your spare time, you do it as if you're doing homework, like start studying mathematics or algebra or Sanskrit. So that's the comment on what he has said. And then I will speak very briefly about, because the topic is how to promote Sanskrit. You know, the abhyasa, the satsanga, the many benefits of the language, all that discussion is very relevant, but all of that comes into play when we first encourage people to do this in the first place, and I think that is something I want to talk about. You know, once they start doing it, the benefits will come, but the question is, how do you get them to do? And there is a story of a private school teacher, and I will only narrate it if I get another turn, but some general directions in which promotion can be done is, number one, as people mentioned, the yoga places. There are plenty of yoga places in New York and all over the country. It would be a beautiful idea to let them know that Sanskrit and yoga are inseparable. The Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is the text by which the yogas go by. And the way to put it is not in a condescending or authoritarian manner, to let them know that if they understood even the little bit of nuances of mantras and some of the basic tenets of the language, then they would connect to yoga on so much more mind-body level. It wouldn't be a physical exercise anymore. And telling the teachers that, because one time when I did a recording session with a yoga teacher, and he was chanting Om Suryaya Namaha, and the way he was saying was Om Suyaya Namaha. And I said, Surya, there is a beautiful, I gave the etymology, and he actually took out my tabla parts, but kept the part where I was telling him what Surya means. I don't know if it was flattering or not, but that's not the point. If you let them know that, because everybody wants to be a yoga teacher, it is intricately connected with Sanskrit language, and a little bit of understanding will go a long way in making them, be these most impressive teachers. Then they will like that. That's number one. Number two, the government of India, the current government of India for past 4 or 8 years is trying to revive the ancient wisdom instead of blindly subscribing to the British educational system, which had its advantages when it was in place. They're trying to deliberately revive on a governmental scale. And there are beautiful government portals, and I don't want to go into the list. One can look at it to see what steps they have taken to specifically promote Sanskrit in the common folk. And the third comment, and then I will stop this turn, is for a successful implementation of anything, the question we need to ask is how to make it sexy and bring it into the mainstream. That is exactly what it is. Already in New York public schools, there are many places where meditation is being implemented. When as artists, there are organizations that liaison between the public schools and the artists, and I have done a lot of it, continue doing it. Whenever we go into school, 4th graders or 5th graders, we start with 4 or 5 minutes of meditation. And it's very simple. You just close your eyes, hum something. That humming can be equivalent of an om. And that itself, within that context, has a calming effect. And the teachers repeatedly say that they just sat quietly and they're so up to it. So meditation is already being recognized as an interesting tool to calm kids down. Sanskrit can and should be the next thing, and we should ask ourselves, how can we approach the governmental educational system to let them know that this is a beautiful tool, you can try it a little bit at a time, just like the verbs that we were reciting yesterday when Shanta did his presentation. So trying to bring something in the mainstream. I'll say one more example of what happened right here at the ashram. This woman, Nicole Paxson, she's a good friend of ashram. She was staying here for quite some time, and she was doing babysitting in Tuxedo. And she took it upon herself to teach those kids some Sanskrit chanting. And they got so excited because they found it so cool to speak in a new tongue, and she's taught them the rhythm. So again, I think as Paddy was commenting, aiming it at a young children ensures that it goes a very long way. And this is not just a business tactic, it's good for both sides, because the children will be primed with something that is very profound. If there's a next turn, I will say other things.
So with that, let's take a minute to chant Jalabindu Nipatena. Those of you who know it, please let it rip. And then I think I'm going to ask Indra to come up and give the explanation for the mantra, but it's one of my favorite ever. So let's just start with an Om. Om. Jalabindu Nipatena Kramasha Puyate Gata Sahetu Sarva Vidyanam Dharmasya Cha Dhanasya Cha Dharmasya Cha Dhanasya Cha. And now I'm going to put Indra on the spot and ask her to come up to the microphone.
This is where I'm the little baby. I can do it, I can do it.
She doesn't need that. She's got that microphone there. Okay.
Okay, can people hear me?
Yeah.
So What is lovely about this mantra is it also is a little bit cross-cultural, because they have in Spanish the same saying, gotita, gotita, se llena el vaso. And I have found it very helpful with patients. People would be like, if they don't get all fixed the first visit, they understand that it is little by little. And someone who understands Spanish, if I say that, gotita, gotita, se llena el vaso, by drop by drop, the jar is filled. And to be much more mundane, well, first of all, I need to translate, and then I got a little bit ahead of myself. So, by the falling of drops of water, the jar is gradually filled. So it is with all knowledge, with all correct behavior, and with wealth. Little by little is how it gets done. And it's interesting that Shanta brought this up, because the one story I was going to tell was about something with Guruji. We have some tapes of his that little by little we are digitizing. And a couple years ago, there was a tape that I found that was so nice, and I looked at the date on it, and it had some stotra in it. And stotra chanting and metrics are something I have a lot of confidence in now. And I looked at the date and I thought, ooh, we should sound pretty good on that tape. And I listened to it, and I can hear my own voice really clearly on the tape. And we were terrible. As a group, we were terrible.
What year was that, roughly?
Probably 75. But it was, I thought by then we were pretty good, right? And it was very profound to hear what Guruji did with it. It was a little bit longer meter. It might have been Shardula Vikriditam. He repeated it like 5 times. And at the end of it, he said, very fine. Something like that. Or he didn't ever make us wrong. And what I wanted to suggest was maybe we can do the same things with ourselves as students and as teachers, is to be patient with ourselves as he set us that great example. And I have a lifetime of taking classes now behind me. And I don't always, there's so much to think about with what Guruji gave me, but one of the things he did, he created a safe space for learning. And as we try to create it for others, I think it is useful, as I said, that we should remember to create it for ourselves. Not to think, you can think about failing or whatever. The other thing which I can't quote, I don't know, maybe Bharati has this. There's several verses in Sanskrit which say steps of learning, and one of the steps is teaching, because you don't learn on as deep a level until you teach. The very first step is humbleness. So as we are constantly learning each day, it's not so bad to come back to that, but also to be, as Guruji was with us, gentle. He didn't say like, okay, that was pretty bad. He didn't say, it was just very fine. And he kept doing it. That was the abhyasa. He kept teaching us. And then we got good.
Thank you. Wonderful. Yeah, please.
I wanted to say one of the things I most enjoyed about Patty's presentation yesterday was this it felt like a very encouraging, I loved your method of teaching and saying, you can do this, you can do this, take your time, start with the places that look familiar or that you've seen before. And I had never heard that before actually in Sanskrit. I don't think I heard a Sanskrit teacher say that you have the tools, you can do this, just look at look at it pada by pada, and we'll go through it. And if you're not sure, but don't look it up first, just start with what you already have and what you already know, and yeah, I just want to say I really enjoyed, so that sort of ties in with the gentleness and the having a certain confidence in yourself, but also being humble and sort of just taking it from there. And I really enjoyed that in the class, and I think that's a very, like what Indira said, safe space, I think, for learning and maybe also for teaching. Those of us who do end up sharing or teaching, that we can say, this is what I've been taught, or and I will try to, share it or pass it on with as, hopefully, as little error as possible. And then if there are any small errors or, mispronunciation or not the right meter or something, of course it's our own imperfections, but yeah, that's what I also enjoyed.
Thank you. Everything that everybody says is sparking, so I've got like this firing going off in my brain. The first time I met Patty was in Dave Ains' Friday class. Didn't meet, but saw her online. And here we go. Yes, here we go. And everybody's properly jumping in. Oh, I know that word, I know this word, I know that word. And I know the meaning of all this. And Patty began to help me a lot. Just write down your notes on the side. Don't jump to any conclusions. Like she was saying in her program yesterday, just make a little note. Maybe that's the right thing. Maybe it's not time for that. Maybe it won't be for this verse or this sentence. But by making the note and making your description of it, you're learning anyway, no matter what's going to happen. So she was building that, and now I've become a Patty fan in terms of my own study. It's like, make the note, don't jump into conclusion. And in Dave Ains' class, I wanted to jump in and know it all. And I wanted everybody to know that I knew it all. And I was constantly wrong. And Dave Ains was beautiful. He said, nice, good. And it wasn't nice, and it wasn't good. But that's the power of Sanskrit, the kindness of Sanskrit. Yes, please.
To just keep going with this conversation, Naren was saying if we have the people started, fine, but we need to get them started. And then this idea of, do we teach, and can we be humble in teaching, to kind of go back to all of that. I think, we're having this panel, how do we make Sanskrit, succeed? It's probably everybody in the audience and online knows enough Sanskrit that they could be, you don't have to use the word teaching if you don't want, but they could be teaching it. And I don't mean you have to have a formal class, but there may be people who are interested, and there may be some small aspect of the language that you feel comfortable enough with. I promise you that if you try to articulate out loud how you would explain that to someone, even to just prepare for yourself, you will learn a lot. And then when you get in front of those people and they start asking you questions, you will really know what you know and don't know, and you'll improve leaps and bounds. And to the point of this method, the Sanskritists, we have high PhD Sanskritists. We have like unknowns in India who know more Sanskrit than all of us combined will ever know. I mean, there's people everywhere of all walks of life. So I have to give credit to this guy named Rodrigo, and he was a student at Penn, and he was in the linguistics department, and he wound up quitting Sanskrit. He doesn't do it anymore. He became a neuro something or other brain guy because he was interested in how the language works in the mind. And but I would take private tutoring sessions with him, and part of the reason why I started teaching was because the method he used with me was kind of what I was doing with you guys yesterday, and it's so, once you've had exposure to it, you feel like you need, and you see other students suffering in a class, you feel like you need to help them, tell them that they can do it too. So I really felt it was my duty. Actually, maybe when I met Suzanne, she was one person who I felt like, as a student, would benefit from that method. And yeah, he would make me sit there. I would have to prepare verses ahead of time, and I would just have to sit there, close all of my notes, could not have a pencil out, had to open up and do everything that I could do from scratch without looking. If I was going to look something up, he stopped me. He said, "What are you looking up? Why are you looking it up? What is the stem? Wait, you're looking up yogi or yogin. What are you? So there had to be you're going in the roots book? Okay, what root do you think this could be? Let's posit the root. Don't just go rifling through looking for something that might be familiar that has a V and an R in it. We've all been there with right? So anyway, but yeah, so I think people, and I've also, even in like not teaching, but I've had a couple of audiences that I've just happened to be in situations where people came to me and said, hey, would you just give us like a short talk on like what the deal is with Sanskrit? Yeah, where I didn't even have to prepare anything. They just wanted to know what had I done and how had I gotten there. And you know, one of those students wound up going and studying things like 4 years later. So you're planting seeds and giving people information that could be really useful to them.
Thank you. We're all getting older. And I mean, Bhartihari has this incredible verse. Many of you might know it. Yavat swastamidam shariram arjam. And he says, waiting till you're older, it gets harder and harder to develop your meditation practice. So do it when you're younger, or as young as you are right now. And he gives the example of the man who's on his deathbed. And he's just now starting to take the medication and herbs that might have helped him 20 years ago. And the man who's digging a well to get the water, but his house is already in conflagration. It's too late. And I think Bhartihari has a lot to say about how we should think about going along with our lives. And something, if it hasn't happened yet, you can almost be sure something's going to happen and trigger us to think, I wish I had done more, we'll do more now. And start thinking about, before you get really, really old. Guruji gave us that blessing of training us days on end, Sanskrit grammar, chanting, nouns, verbs, all just to build that tool of meditation, so that when we are getting older and we are starting to feel our bodies aching, we're not going to go into complete chaos. We're going to have some tool to depend on and maybe to continue to build that tool. Anyway, you are next.
Well, I want to change the subject a little bit, so I want to leave it open first if anybody else has something to say on this theme of teaching, handing down. Do we have anything from... Oh, we do.
Kanta, come on. No, it's okay. We need another voice. You have to speak into the microphone for the remote people. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there's a verse in Sanskrit. Bharati has given me this many times, and I don't remember the whole thing, but she will remember it, and it's about aging and having your hair pulled. Ajaram, it starts out. And you'll probably all know it somewhere along the way, about how you should live your life. I'm going to have to translate it because I can't do the Sanskrit. But you have to live your life as though death has you by the hair, and it doesn't, or something like that, right? You have to go with the both things in your later life. Just say it.
Somebody remember this?
It starts Ajara, right? Ajara.
Madhuram?
Maravat Pragno. Yeah. And then it's Mrityuna on the second line.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Kesheshu, yeah. Kesheshu Mrityuna Eva.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you, Bharati, for ringing a bell for us. Yeah.
I wanted to come back to the point about people coming through yoga asana. I think I know there are a lot of people that are very hungry for this and don't know how to get it. I think that, on a insanely practical level, Facebook marketplace ads are very effective. I think it would be effective to sort of stop and think about the approach to it. I've been myself through the, like, what is physical? It's physical. It's not. The people who are doing yoga asana, who are going to be interested in Sanskrit, are not just doing a physical practice. It's something closer to dancing with the nadam. It's something closer to swimming in air. I mean, there are deep experiences of union available through yoga asana, and I think that's the place to connect.
Mm-hmm.
I know other people here have asana practices.
And I think if you come into contact, I'll speak for Indra and I, if you're coming into contact with us for Sanskrit training, part of our part is to have you become a teacher. Because we can't just keep it for ourselves, then it's going to die. So we have to pass it along. And the ashram needs to pass it along. And we all need to get involved in becoming the teachers to pass it along. Yeah.
I really think we should invite people in the audience to just come forward and share their things. I think we should.
Yeah. No. Why don't we have people just walk up to the mic, even if you're afraid to? We need you. Right, especially if you're afraid.
When I first came, I was a teenager to the ashram, and flying in from the Midwest. So my parents had to pay for everything, the ticket and my stay, and it did become rather expensive for them. And my dad, I came one year, then I said I have to go the next year, and then the next year, and I think one year he asked me about the third year, "You've already been there. Why do you have to go again? Like, can't you go someplace else?" Like, well, yeah. And I said, no, I have to go back. Oh, okay. But along that time, I don't know if it was the second year, but it was very soon in that early years, Guruji said, Sanskrit, my brain's gone blank. What is it you give to students who need a help in their tuition? Scholarship. Mm-hmm. Sorry, my brain just went blank. Sanskrit scholarship. You have a Sanskrit scholarship. I did not ask for a Sanskrit scholarship. I wasn't thinking that I needed to help my parents financially by taking a Sanskrit scholarship. But by having the Sanskrit scholarship, of course, it cut the costs for my family. So I went along with it. Okay, Sanskrit scholarship, no problem. But it was a lot of work. He did not make it easy. And he had me writing things, preparing papers for the class, and Well, what was interesting in this time period is I was very, very depressed, extremely depressed. And it took 8 years to get out of that deep depression. Even though I met the Guru, and yes, I actually had taken yoga teacher training, so I was teaching yoga at my university for the whole time that I was there, even taught in graduate school. So I was teaching yoga, and I had the Sanskrit scholarship, and after 8 years, finally, it let go. And so I have to attribute it to what Guruji was doing. Through Sanskrit, and of course, the meditation that came automatically with that study. And the relief was huge. And I'm amazed I survived it. I will say, mental illness is in my family. And I don't know that there's a single one in the older generation, not the younger. The older generation, we've all had to deal on some level with mental illness. So it's just been the challenge for the family. And I just couldn't be more grateful to have found the ashram and be here with all of you.
the man who has donated liberally to the School of Sanskrit, because I sit in the office, I have the figures. Next, I invite Ezra, and no is not an answer.
I was hoping Ezra would come up, actually.
Hello? Narenji, you broke my anonymity. I do want to say that, when I came in and I saw Patty, who we've spent probably 4 years every Friday, except every 6th Friday we take a week off, but together. When I saw her and I'd started to listen to Patty talking, I started crying. And and Narenji talked about because of the pandemic, and Andrea, we met Andrea here when she first came. And so the pandemic stopped this place being open for outside guests, but it opened up that, do the math, 52 weeks a year, it's probably 4 years that the Friday night class has been going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible. I mean, and I couldn't say out loud one thing I've learned there. But internally, on a cellular level, the philosophy behind it is in me and comes out in my life. And I drove here from Provincetown, 5-hour ride, 5 hours and 5 minutes exactly. And I listened to an 1.5 hour discourse from one of my teachers. And I looked 4 times at my phone to see the title of the discourse, and of course I didn't remember it, and I don't remember it, and I don't care. Because what I hear comes in, and whatever he teaches, he does a verse with it, or he expounds on a verse, and so I don't have to put pressure on myself to repeat it out loud, but I come to the ashram because I followed Jenny. If she was going to a Russian Orthodox church, I would have followed her there, and Jeevani. But I continue to come because of Bharati, and just her. If we came from the city, we'd have to get up early to get here, to get for meditation. When she was doing the Yoga Sutras on Wednesday nights, we used to leave Manhattan, rush to get here to the sutras. And we'd be sleeping, and we'd leave afterwards. But her devotion, and besides her teaching, the verses, watching her actions, I am quick to cut people up, and blah, blah, blah. And I just watch her put her head down, and so that's, and, because of the pandemic, Devenji is connected to this ashram. I mean, he was connected through Dr. Sharma, but, and because of Devenji, we have Patty. I mean, I was crying, and it's great. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Isha. Naren?
Well, I don't know who's next, but I will just reply to one thing that Ezra said about breaking the anonymity. There's a beautiful verse. It's a person thanking his state of being destitute. And here is what he says: Bho daridrya namastubhyam siddhoham tvat prasadataha pashyamyaham jagat sarvam na mam pashyati kaschana. He's saying, my state of poverty, thank you very much. Because of you, I have become a siddha, like an anonymous siddha. I can see the whole world passing by, but nobody pays attention to me. With Ezra being so endowed with internal wealth to generously donate to our cause, the anonymity, which is a privilege of a destitute, you cannot possibly hope to achieve that. So it is not my fault.
Lovely. Wow. That's so cool. You? No? Don't have to. We have about 10 people left in the room that need to speak. Yeah? Who is this?
From Cami.
Uh-huh.
You'll have to correct my pronunciation. I'm not the Sanskrit scholar, most of you are. Dvijanam, twice born. 1, physical birth, born of the womb. 2, spiritual birth, indoctrinated by the rites of Rig Veda, with emphasis beginning with Gayatri mantra, leading into the spiritual birth, literature, knowledge of Sanskrit. That's from Cami Netra.
Lovely.
We'll bring the microphone over. I'll bring the microphone.
Great idea.
From here then. Okay, I'm Sharada. I
A little closer. Really close and loud.
Okay. I'm Sharada. I came to the ashram in 1973, a week after I graduated from college, and came here. I had hitchhiked here actually with a friend of mine in April, and I loved the place. So I came back, and I started hearing Sanskrit chanting, and I just adored it. I loved it. It just filled my being. It changed me. And I just started studying, and I was supposed to go somewhere else after 2 weeks, and I just couldn't leave. And Sanskrit just, it sort of is, to me, like, it puts me in the here and now. I don't know how to explain that, but it's just in the present, so I don't know. One time, my father came from Lithuania, and I thought, and Lithuania has a lot of similarities to Sanskrit, and I thought, well, maybe that is one of the reasons I'm attracted to it, to Sanskrit. But basically, it resonates with me. It's like when I study Sanskrit, I feel like I'm absolutely in the present, and I love it, and I appreciate everybody who has taught me and has opened up the field to me. Thank you.
Jeevani's going to have to come up and say something. Yes, no, absolutely. You drug me here. And then you took a vow of silence when I arrived, so I couldn't say anything. So, absolutely.
And she bugged me to bug you. Yeah. So, I mean, you don't have any choice. You can say 3 words and go back to your seat. That's fine. Yeah, the other day, Jeevani was on silence, and I didn't know it. So I went up to her and started talking, how are you, what's going on? And she was kind of mute, and I couldn't understand, was she having a hard time? And then I said, no, I said, how are you, what's going on? And she kept going like this. But her badge that said I'm in silence was covered up. So it's like, how was I supposed to know what was going on? Finally she did. And then I understood. But now no silence.
All right. I wish I was still maintaining that silence. It was only 2 days, but it was so refreshing, relaxing, and all of the things that I would have maybe said in response to conversations and things, 100% of them were unnecessary, as I realized with time. I didn't come up here to talk about silence. In fact, I was going to say a little bit more than 3 words, which were, I'm so thankful to everyone, and I'm so hopeful and excited that we have all this new energy in the School of Sanskrit. been happening. And it's just, for me, it's culminated this long weekend, and I'm just so delightful, and I know we're going to get stronger and stronger, not only in our study, but in our community. So I'm very happy and grateful, and I really want to continue silence somehow when I return home. So, okay, thanks.
Jeevani's also going to help more and more with the World Sanskrit Day celebration going into next year in terms of fulfilling some things that I just couldn't get to. Anna? Tara? Where's Tara? Tara's there, I see her. Better if you come up so that people online can see you. It's a must. Only 3 words, though. Sometimes when you say the opposite, you get more than that.
Thank you all. You're all my teachers, and it's been so amazing just every time that I come and experience whoever's presenting. I came pretty broken to the ashram, and Guruji returned from his world tour and was chanting, and I was blown away. It's like he opened me up to the essence that I had never experienced before. And it was that chanting that brought me back, that made me drop out of teaching, whatever I was doing, and just want to be here in the aura of Sanskrit and Guru. And I remember in a pretty abusive relationship with 3 children, whenever I'd come to a class with Guruji and we'd be chanting, I would be lifted out of that suffering that was pretty intense. My kids to this day think I was abandoning them for Guru Sanskrit. The truth is, I could not be the mother that I wanted to be without having the strength from Sanskrit and what it offered. And after 50 years, even though I'm a terrible student and I'm not a regular practitioner, but I'm taking your words very seriously, Patty. There are times when mantras just come up into my brain and mind and start chanting. I'm not chanting, but these happen. And it's so joyous. And I experience so much joy from the Sanskrit that I know I have to practice more regularly. So thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Wonderful. Please.
We're doing the Sanskrit Love Fest on Janmashtami. It's lovely. It's just lovely.
Indira's coming. What?
He said he would tell a story.
Oh.
I'll be quick. A few years ago, I was doing a music workshop through young audiences, that liaisons between the schools in the city and the artists. So I gave a music performance in Little Lake Dam. The class of this woman, her name is Susie Sokol. And those were 4th graders and younger, or maybe 5th graders and younger, small children. And when we finished our music, she looked at me and she said, do me a favor, say the number 1 and then point to any kid. So I didn't know where this was going, so I said 1 and I pointed to a girl. She comes and says, Ekam. These are white American kids, grade 5 and younger. Then I said 2 and somebody said Dve, Trini, Chatwari. This went on. It was quite amazing. And then we went up to 17, and then the teacher said, this is how much we have learned. And then sure enough, one girl gets up and says, to me, what is the word for 18? I happen to know Ashtadasha Puraneshu Vyasasya Vachanadvayam, so I was able to answer that question. But afterwards, the teacher asked me to say my name aloud, Narendra, and then asked me to point to any kid. That kid came forward, and he actually wrote in Devanagari Narendra, except that he forgot the dot on top of Ray. But most kids in India won't do even that much these days. So my point is, then I started a conversation with this teacher. It turned out that she was a lover of Sanskrit, and it was a private school in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn. I can tell you the address. In fact, I happened to perform there a few months ago, again. Above and beyond their usual curriculum, the teacher took it upon herself to spend an extra hour letting the parents know that she was going to share this beautiful language with the kids, and she specifically chose the youngest age group because that's when they're impressionable. I thought it was such a gigantic task that at some point we should invite her to the Ananda Ashram to share her experience. But the reason why this story is important in this context is encouraging something like this in a little more systematic way in the schools or in these organizations in the city can be a very, very effective way. Because when I went back to the school a few months ago, and this was 6 years after I had gone there first, some of those kids were like much more grown up and teenagers. Some of them are still there, some of them had moved on. But they actually shook hands and they said, we remember you and you give such a beautiful performance. So the sanskaras go a long way, and Ananda Ashram, our strong Sanskrit school, with Bharati's blessings, is in a perfect position to be that ambassador, to start writing letters to the educational system saying, we can contribute this, and we can take away the religious overtones that are perceived by some, rightly or wrongly is not the point, but just from the point of neuroscience and the neuroplasticity and improving your tongue, all these things are extremely helpful and will be receptive to the school system in New York. I'm very sure about that.
Naren, could you reach out to her?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I will reach out to her.
Wonderful. Maybe even to present here next year.
Let's do that.
Be amazing. And bring a bunch of kids. Well, maybe we'll do the kids program next year at the same time.
It just occurred to me right now.
Yeah.
And now we're talking.
You got me started. Two things. About 4 or 5 years ago, a woman I was working with, her best friend died. And it was the first year of the pandemic. It was the summer of 2020. So I said, I got her and 2 other people who were working, and we did the Trayambakam. I did it a couple of times for her, 3 times. And for a week, we would do it each day. The 3 of us would get together. And 2 or 3 years later, the other guy who was involved in it, his mother died. And he came over to me and he said, would you please chant with me for my mother? And it's beautiful. And what Narenji was talking about, Jeevani and I could be at a show, eating, taking a walk. She'll get an email and say, it's Susie. So I have to walk away because for 25 minutes she'll investigate what Susie wants to know about Sanskrit, so how she could help her students. And there was years that she would give Jeevani each of their names, and Jeevani would have to do the Devanagari so the students can practice their names. And this is as long as I know Jeevani. And so yes, Susie Sokol is a good connection for the ashram. And it comes full circle through the music. Thank you.
There are 2 people who haven't spoken yet. Dharma, do you have something to say? Yeah.
Is this good?
Yeah.
Okay. You asked the question of how to open up Sanskrit to more people. And I think one of the most powerful ways that you can do that is by looking at your own story. And through each of our stories of how we found our way here, what we're doing is conveying what Sanskrit has to offer. And that the diversity of our stories, when we are held together, you allow people to see that it's not just one doorway, it's many doorways. And that for each of us, we all have a way in which Sanskrit has filled something, a need.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dharma. Yeah, please. Oh, come up here.
Sanskrit is a beautiful, beautiful language. It's beautiful to hear. Its frequency vibrates throughout your body. We have a phenomenal group of teachers here, led by Bharati and many other teachers. The topic for the panel was how do we also promote Sanskrit in bringing more people here, and in living here and being here and seeing we could definitely use a lot more numbers in souls really dedicated to learning Sanskrit and being here and higher knowledge, to just spend a couple minutes even on how we can all as a group, whether it's through promotion or however we bring more people here to our gatherings for Sanskrit and learning the Sanskrit, whether it be, whether these conferences or in the main house in our classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Karanavali. Lovely.
Yes, I wanted just to add, we've been talking about reaching out to children, to the sort of young age, which I think is a really good age to get people excited about Sanskrit and the Guruji called it the science of vibration, right? And or Sanskrit as a sort of spiritual practice as well, like you say, daily practice, but it could also be considered spiritual practice or something that gives you, it's an anchor, in everyday life, I think, to get you also through the difficult moments, which there are definitely plenty. But what I'm also fascinated with, because it's a field I know little about, is Ken Pugh's and Sarah's presentations on brain, neurological studies about how Sanskrit chanting, listening to Sanskrit chanting, and Sanskrit, the vibration of Sanskrit language can possibly, affect the brain. And you were doing project in June and measuring that. So I think even in the sort of area of neurological and brain studies, and also the healing, I think the healing aspect of Sanskrit with persons who are going through illness, whether it's mental, whether it's a mental, it affects your mind or your body, or we were talking about preventing Alzheimer or dementia, and Sarah was speaking about how her meditation method that she is using with her Parkinson patients visibly reduced the tremors that they were experiencing in the hand, for example. She showed us last year in the presentation. So I think that's a wonderful thing to explore for future, of course, how Sanskrit might be even brought into areas that it maybe hasn't been traditionally. I don't know if in India they are using this, but I believe in it. I believe that it can prevent, certainly when I'm studying Sanskrit, I feel like, oh, this is so good against Alzheimer. Because you're just so, it's so hard on the brain sometimes. And there was one more thing. So I think children, old age healing. Oh, and I'm also thinking computer programming. We didn't mention, but of course for artificial intelligence and everything, it's already all happening. So I'm not concerned about Sanskrit going anywhere. I think it's in all fields. It's just we it's nice to bring it to more people and for more people to have the benefit.
I think I mentioned this during the weekend that we were having, before COVID, we were having Panini classes at our house, and also some people were streaming in or Zooming in. And after some of the classes ended, I asked people how they felt about the class, and a number of people said, I didn't understand a thing, but I feel so wonderful. And I think I was kind of thinking you'd come up and talk about that, about why Panini so much advanced Sanskrit, and the simple answer for Indra. Would you come tell at that mic? I'm picking on her because I can't.
I think it's a lovely story from one point of view. From another point of view, it also implies that I was not a very successful teacher, in that nobody who showed up understood what I was talking about. And that was not true. So
that was not true.
Some people came more for the satsang and the tea, and we always have very good snacks. We provided and other friends brought. But
did you notice that she came right up to explain?
Well, so many times you were saying that people didn't understand what I was communicating. That is not
I have studied Panini with you both, and I understand, and it's beautiful, and I only want to study Panini with you.
Thank you. I was thinking one thing to say about Panini, which we hadn't talked about. I think I may go back to presenting on that next year, either that or Subhashitani. But it's one of the gifts Guruji gave us. And he slipped it in a very different way. There are, as Patty was alluding, there can be a lot of vada or scholarly debate around Panini. Guruji didn't teach it from that point of view. He made it fun for us. It'd be, what's the cool rule that explains some aspect of grammar that we're learning? And that's the way I have fun teaching it. But the other thing that is, for me, hugely important about Panini is that sometimes I need to take a break from all things emotional. It's sort of like going on silence, which I have not done in many years, and I think next time maybe I'll give myself a day at least. Very healing. And I was thinking about it from the point of view of music, and this would be something Narain might speak to. Panini is like its own universe. Dr. Sharma used to say, you play the Paninian game. And I remember in the early years, I would go from periods where I thought Panini was dry and dull and boring, and then periods to where I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And it was like I could flip back and forth, and I didn't really care at the time. It was like, okay, if I don't feel like Panini, I can do something else today. And then it gradually took me over. But it is another gift in that it's not emotional. So we did a lot of talking, I did a lot of talking yesterday about imagery. And this year in Stotras, I didn't hit as much on the emotional aspect of talking to God, but there's some implications there that if you need God to be a boat for you, you perhaps need some lifting up, right? But Sanskrit also gives us this other study, which is really, I think a lot of people say mathematical, and I always had a lot of blocks in math. So it's hard for me to say that. And what I was thinking about is music is almost like an intersecting point. This is the sort of thing that I think Narain would understand that I don't understand, but that in one sense, music creates emotion in us. It brings up all this stuff, but then the study of music itself is more like math. Anyway, so that is talking in several circles, and I'm going to stop now, and maybe Narain will have something wise to say.
I don't know how much time we have. Oh, okay. All right. You know, all right. You know, this panel discussion is really about the promotion of language. So I don't want to go into too many esoterics, but because the question of mathematics and music in Sanskrit was raised, I think I'll make a couple of comments on that. In this context, at the least, it will hopefully shed some more light on the possibilities of the language learning and neuroscience. Well, first of all, pragmatic attempts, or analytical attempts, to see the commonalities in all these disciplines have been made in great depth in recent years. One example is, so Bach's concertos, especially the solo cello concertos, and that comes closest to Indian music, it's a solo act. Bach's solo cello concertos, the repetitive patterns, or even just the patterns in the waxing and waning of musical notes, graphically and frequency-wise, have been mapped either visually or mathematically to try to correlate. And without going into the details, it is astounding that the correlation has been robust. In other words, the symphony that exists in musical notes has been translated equally aesthetically beautifully in other systems like numbers or even the graphic representation. This goes on to show, and just like Ken was talking the other day, quite literally, when you hear a concerto, and if you plot the graph, it will look like this. The brain actually replicates that graph in its grasping. You know, the brain is actually playing that melody in the neuronal firing. So, in other words, I think the take-home lesson is a profound anything has a capability of going beyond its own system and making its effects felt in the most subtle atomic level. Again, not to get too technical, but the default mode network that has been constantly active in our brain, that anatomical area is found to be selectively degraded in Alzheimer's. It was a huge revelation. And what that means is the fuse, and if the electric cable is being used all its life, no wonder one of these days it's going to snap. That's exactly what happens. And the two things that have been found to selectively bring some peace to even the default mode network that the evolution created to be never at sleep, those two things are meditation and classical music. And especially Indian classical music, the study says it, I'm not saying it. And therefore, when somebody says that when I meditate or when I listen to music, I feel calm and quiet, it's not just a mental vanity, but it is actually making its effect manifest at the level of telomeres, which is the base of the DNA. And now try to put a pragmatic value on meditation and music. There is no comparison. So there is no two ways, but the fact that what you said, these effects are very observable and they're very profound. One more comment on music and mathematics. Harmonic series, which is a big deal in mathematics because eventually it was translated into the play of prime numbers. And when they were mapped in the two dimensions, which is including the complex numbers in the system, and then seeing what values yield 0, it turned out to be that they were all, what was intractable, they all happened to be on one single line of the landscape of complex numbers with its valleys and oceans and mountains, I'm speaking metaphorically. But the harmonic series that started all this discussion, it is a contribution to mathematics by music. And I started the discussion by saying human voice has an implicit harmonic series. So again, the point that I'm making is, at some point, even the divisions, the distinctions of faculties, such as mathematics and humanities and Sanskrit and music and philosophy and spirituality, these are the conventions, man-made conventions for understanding the subject, but at the root of it, they spill over and they're all the same vibrations. And even the pragmatics are proving they're spilling over so much that if you go to the depth of one thing, it might yield results in all faculties. Moreover, those distinctions in the faculties will cease to exist. Maybe our gurus and yogis knew it all along. It's good to have that reaffirmation through what the modern sciences are saying.
Purnima, please.
You know, the other thing which was very sobering, we had recently, last week, 10 days ago, Guru Karunamayi was here, and she had a beautiful yagya, a ceremony. Many people came. She stayed till around 7:30, and she gave a talk for those that could stay. And one thing she said, which was very startling, is we're already in World War III. And I was rather shocked that she just put it right out there, that we're already in World War III. And so what it just hit me in what we're all doing here is the peace that does come through this study, because it lifts you up, which is why Guruji gave me that Sanskrit study. He knew it would work. We need it now more than ever, because there is, I think, a tumultuous time ahead. And so all the more reason, anything we can do here at the ashram and all the teaching that's happening with Devan and through your East-West Institute, Sanskrit Institute in California, Shanta and Indra, we have to just keep putting it out as much as possible, because I think now, more than ever, it is going to be essential to help people survive.
Mm-hmm. Anybody left online, Seth, that wants to speak? Okay. Yeah.
I came a little bit late to this session, and I came when people were talking about their experiences, and I got confused. If I had a specific question put to me, then I might do better. I don't know what to say otherwise. About Sanskrit, give me a specific question, somebody here.
So I think you said to me yesterday something like, we have all these different teachers with different styles. So maybe you can speak a little bit about how teachers can do their job best in teaching Sanskrit.
What was the context that you're quoting me?
I had just finished my talk, and you said, you do it this way, Shanta does it that way, Guruji did it this way. It's, different. So
Okay.
maybe a little bit about the flavors of how to, different personalities and learning Sanskrit.
I don't know what to say.
It's not a good enough
because
question.
It's about others, right?
Well, because you've seen
I
so
didn't
many...
I didn't mean to emphasize the differences, but the different aspects.
Okay, then talk about the different aspects.
You all have been talking about it.
You wanted a question, I'm trying.
It's such a question that I cannot answer it.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, again, I should talk about the everything and the everybody. Yes. See the problem? I can talk about Guru, And he meant what he said and what he wrote, not once or twice, but through the years, that the ashram is for meditating and studying and working together. In my own case, as one of the teachers put by him here, right, I don't seem to have it, because sometimes there's 0, sometimes there's 1, sometimes there's 2 students, sometimes there's many when there's a group for the weekend. So I can't help myself with being a better teacher, so therefore I don't know what to say about others. Something is missing maybe in me, and you tell me, rather than ask me, now tell me. I don't know how to feel.
One of the most pivotal moments in my life was in the summer of 1972, when you said to me, and it had never crossed my mind, I was a 16-year-old kid. You said to me, you could be a teacher.
Mm-hmm. And look, wow.
More than half a century ago. And I had been seriously studying at the Ashram in San Francisco for 7 weeks. I came to New York and I was just being a teenager having fun. I would go to classes, but I wasn't doing homework the way I had been doing in San Francisco. And you said something to me, and I don't even remember what it was you said at first, but you said you could be a teacher. And it changed my complete attitude about my study.
You did well, and you are doing well, and you will do even more well in the future.
Bharati, nothing is missing in you except a good photo shoot.
Is that about Sanskrit?
No, it would help the School of Sanskrit. A good photo shoot. That's the only thing missing.
This is a public discussion, it's not appropriate. Because it's public, it's not appropriate.
I need to tell some of the impact that you've had on me.
I didn't mean.
I know you didn't mean.
Okay.
And I was not even going to talk about you, but Narendra brought you up first early on. And the way you hold the space here, you hold the space here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, the most recent impact you had on me is you caught me reading the translit because I was not pronouncing the different sibilants correctly. So you had enough experience to know that must mean that I was in the translit instead of the Devanagari. And you told me that I could do it. And I told you that I can't and that it would just take me too long to do it. And you said it was okay. You said it was okay to not get it right and to mumble, and to hear that from you, who has so much strength, had a big impact on me, and I've been reading the Devanagari.
What? Huh? Would you guys like to say more? It's fine. Go get it, please.
I just wanted to say that when I first came, when I came to Ananda Ashram, I had been studying Sanskrit in Barcelona for a year. These were evening classes, not full-time study. I have full-time jobs, so Sanskrit is as someone called it, my hobby. And I looked at them and said, yes, no, it's other way around. Sanskrit is my life and all the rest is the hobby. But I wanted to say, when I walked into a Sanskrit classroom and sat down, and now I'm getting emotional too, just the way the chanting of the alphabet, chanting of the nouns, chanting of the verbs, the language became alive to me. That what I had been doing before was sort of on paper, but I really felt that this is the way it is meant to be taught, and I feel so grateful, and I love so much coming here, and it feels like Gurukulam, very small, intimate, sitting and learning and listening and chanting, and it just, yes. So I'm very grateful for the ways Sanskrit has been taught here at the ashram through Guruji and through Bharati and all the teachers here.
Anything more? No. Anything more? Yeah. So let's finish up with chanting the three invocations together, and then Om. Om. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Om Namo Gurave Namaha. Om. Thank you all so much. Looking forward to the next step.